Look at the headline here where it says Stephen Miller says the White House is looking into suspending habeas corpus, which protects people from unlawful detentions. A lot of it depends on whether the courts do the right thing or not, is what he says. But here's what's wild, is we all know that Trump has been advertising. The border is sealed. The border is fixed. 99.99 is what he says. And so, dude, they're wanting to suspend habeas corpus, even though there is clearly no invasion. All right, here we go. Uncle Fester's coming in hot.
Hold on, there's a question back there first.
Wait, Pundit, I have two quick questions. First, President Trump has talked about potentially suspending habeas corpus to take care of the illegal immigration problem. When could we see that happen, do you think?
Well, the Constitution is clear, and that, of course, is the supreme law of the land, that the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus can be suspended in a time of invasion. So I would say that's an option we're actively looking at. Look, a lot of it depends on whether the courts do the right thing or not. At the end of the day,
suspended in a time of invasion. This is the 99.99% sealed border.
Congress passed a body of law known as the Immigration and Nationality Act, which stripped Article 3 courts, that's the judicial branch, of jurisdiction over immigration cases. So Congress actually passed, it's called jurisdiction stripping legislation. It passed a number of laws that say that the Article 3 courts aren't even allowed to be involved in immigration cases. Many of you probably don't know this. I'll give you a good example. Are you familiar with the term temporary protected status, or TPS, right? So by statute, the courts are stripped of jurisdiction from overruling a presidential determination or a secretarial determination on TPS when the Secretary of Homeland Security makes that determination. So when Secretary Noem terminated TPS for the illegals that Biden flew into the country, when courts stepped in, they were violating explicit language that Congress had enacted, saying they have no jurisdiction. So it's not just, the courts aren't just at war with the executive branch, the courts are at war, these radical rogue judges, with the legislative branch as well too. So all of that will inform the choices the president ultimately makes, yes.
Dude, what a dink. Yeah, that 2018 caravan is going to be getting here any minute now. There was a 2018 caravan, a 2020 caravan, a 2022 caravan. Coincidentally, there's a caravan about 4 months before every election, right? It never arrives, but it seems to always be pressing in here. Dude, this guy is such a fucking clown, bro. Dude, what a fucking clown. He is so weird, but I love, though, how he says during a time of invasion. But if you literally look at Trump and the border, Trump has been saying, he says 99.99 right here. You ready? Look at this.
The number of illegal border crossers released into the United States is down. Listen to this, please. 99.999%. Think of that, 99.999.
Okay.
3 people got in.
3. Okay.
3. And I got angry as hell at Tom Homan. How did you allow 3, Tom? I called up Christy. Christy Noem's doing a great job, Tom Homan. I said, how did you allow 3 people?
All right. So I guess it's safe to say that there's not an invasion. Right? You know what I mean? This is Schrodinger's border. Right. We are both 99.999% closed and being invaded. 9999. May we suspend habeas corpus. 999. Dude, Trumpy. You, boss. Let's go. We're going to give you the strap on, bro. Let's go, baby. Oh, shit. That sounded weird. I meant the strap on explosive device. Give him the strap on. Oh, shit. Yeah. But you notice what fucking Lucifer over here, what fucking Bela Lugosi over here, who has he's got a necklace of garlic on, right? You notice what he said, though, is he said a lot of it depends on whether the courts do the right thing or not. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to say, hey, if the courts call us out on the constitutionality of what we're doing, we're going to suspend the writ of habeas corpus, which, dude, I don't see him getting away with it. I mean, if you look at it, look at the times it's been suspended, okay? If we look it up, here we go. This is when they've suspended it. Hold on one sec. So the writ of habeas corpus is the action of you're detaining me, you must put me before a judge. That's basically what it is guaranteeing, is it's guaranteeing an appearance before a judge or a magistrate, okay? So you can't just hold people. There has to be some type of legal proceeding coming at the end of this thing. See, I wondered if it governed the actual detention itself, right? But you can detain people. You can absolutely detain them so long as there's an appearance that is coming. But look at what it says. Okay, there were 4 times that habeas corpus got suspended. During the Civil War, when Congress authorized it to combat the Ku Klux Klan vigilantism during the Reconstruction, okay, that was after the Civil War when the Ku Klux Klan was just literally, tearing people up. In the Philippines during an insurrection, and then in Hawaii immediately after Pearl Harbor. That's it, okay? So the most recent one was Pearl Harbor, 60 years ago. Dude, that's crazy. 64 years ago. I think the world was better in the late 90s, early 2000s. I don't. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think like what we're going through now with this sort of like slapback of racism and misogyny and shit is an obstacle, and it's going to be a painful one. But the 90s, man, there was a lot of crime in the 90s, and people were really angry in the 90s. I mean, there was a lot of anger, a lot of crime, a lot of like, I don't know, felt like even more hostility, but it wasn't because of the polarization of the political climate. It was just because everybody was like a fucking powder keg, man. A lot of drug use, a lot of drunk driving accidents and shit. I feel like, it was not that great. The music was great, right? And early 2000s was, I don't know, there was the looming shadow of war, September 11th, and all of a sudden Homeland Security comes in. Remember, next thing you know, you're getting a fucking body cavity search to get on a fucking airplane. Like, I don't know, it was still the early days of like gay rights and people couldn't get married. Like, I feel like things are actually a lot better now. A lot more of society is, I mean, think back. Let's look at when the Dixie Chicks were, right? When they got canceled. When did the Dixie Chicks get canceled? So that was in 2003. Oh yeah, dude, I forgot about Columbine. Yeah, the first shooting, that was in 99, right? And so what was crazy about this was, think about this, guys. The Dixie Chicks spoke up against George Bush and the war, and they got like excommunicated. I mean, the backlash they received was insane, okay? They just got like raked over the coals, right? For speaking out against a fucking stupid ass war. You know what I'm saying? And in another invasion, the second invasion in like 10 fucking years of a country that we had nothing to do with, right? So what's crazy about it is, I mean, I guess it's easy for us to romanticize the past, because I think what ends up happening is after you leave the past, you put a lens on it, okay? And, I mean, a lot of good shit happened in the 90s, but like, I don't know. I feel like I remember a distinct type of hopelessness and a distinct type of like rage that I felt for like almost the entirety of the 90s and well into the early 2000s that was a result of, I don't know, it felt like institutionalized depression. You know what I'm saying? I really do. I mean, there's a lot of shit that happened, you know, in the late 80s, right? You know, you had like the space shuttle explode. And after all this shit about the Soviet Union, whatever, the Soviet Union gets dissolved or whatever. And then we all realized that it didn't mean anything. There was no difference in American life after all this shit about the Cold War and shit. And then the minute the wall came down in the Soviet Union, all of a sudden we had a new adversary in the Middle East. And now it was all about Saddam Hussein. And so those of us that were growing up in the 80s and 90s, we literally watched our government just play whack-a-mole with the fucking who was our demonized enemy. And it was like, what the fuck, bro? Like you programmed us for 20 years to believe that this was a mortal, like it was so consequential to end the Soviet Union. And literally the minute you fucking do it, we're like starting another war. We just moved the crosshairs down to the Middle East. And now there's like an invasion and shit. And then, right? And then there's all this over-policing in the 90s because crime was out of control. Why? Because the fucking wealth gap got blown out. Wages were stagnant. The richer people were getting wealthy in the 80s. There was like over-policing in all the neighborhoods and influx of drugs. They were still trying to like attack gay people and shit. And it's like the whole 90s, we were just literally filled with drug-induced rage, okay? And then right in the early 2000s, right, there was all this bullshit about Y2K and all this fucking useless fear. And then 2001, right, when those planes hit the World Trade Center, it's like all of a sudden you're like, God damn, bro. Like maybe we shouldn't have been invading those fucking Middle East countries. What is up, guys? Thank you so much for watching. If you like the video, you want to support independent resistance media, you know what to do. Drop that sub, hit the like button, and please share it. And we do love our members, so if you want to become a member, it's another really great way to support. Thanks again for everything, guys. I'll see you next time. Let's go.